day I've dreaded for the Sonic review series. I knew I'd get to this game eventually, and despite my already negative conceived notions, it was not enough to prepare me for the horror that is Sonic the Hedgehog 2006. Now, I usually like to start my reviews with a bit of ambiguity over whether a game is really good or really bad, and then illustrate my point as I go along, but with Sonic 06, there is no point. It's bad. You know it's bad, I know it's bad, and if you somehow manage to avoid sight with this game over the last decade, brace yourself, since now you're going to see just how really bad it is. In the simplest terms, Sonic 2006 is an unfinished mess that definitely is worthy of the title of worst game ever made. So let's start with the story. The majority of the game revolves around Sonic trying to save Princess Elise from Dr. Robotnik. And therein lies the problem with the story, this focus on Sonic and Elise's relationship. It's just wrong on so many levels, and the game keeps highlighting this awkwardness of their relationship as the story progresses, until finally you get to the end where Elise gives Sonic the kiss of life. Aside from this, the plot juggles a time travel element that gets confusing long before the end. Either way, it's hard to take the plot seriously when a huge plot point of your story is a romantic connection between a human female and a cartoon hedgehog. I mean, I just want to know what kind of drug Sonic Team was on when they allowed this to be accepted. I mean, why couldn't Elise be a hedgehog? Wouldn't that have made more sense? I mean, then at least the relationship wouldn't have come off as creepy. Though if I'm being honest, this whole Sonic has the hots for a human female totally explains why he was giving Amy Rose the cold shoulder for so long. Apparently Sonic don't swing that way. The plot of Sonic 06 is a great example of trying to tell an epic story and going completely overboard with the concept. In the end, the most painful thing about the plot is that by the end, Sonic ends up rebooting the timeline so the events of the game never happened, essentially rendering the whole story pointless. So for Sonic and his pals, it's like the game never happened, but to anyone who played it, well, sorry, you're stuck remembering this for the rest of your life. The gameplay is even worse than the story, if you can believe that. For starters, Sonic Team brought back the hub world from Sonic Adventure, and if you thought that the hub world from Sonic Adventure was a time waster, you ain't seen nothing yet. Sonic 2006 hub world is a barren and empty space devoid of any real life. Now, there are people hanging around, but they look creepy and out of place in a Sonic game. It's like all of these assets, including the town and the people, were all developed for another game, and then at the last minute they decided just to stick this in a Sonic game for some strange reason. Now, these people will give Sonic side quests, and sometimes you have to perform one in order to make it to the next action stage. The biggest problem here is that not only are the tasks pointless and no fun, but you have to put up with the constant loading screens. Each time you talk to someone, you get a loading screen. Then you talk to them again, and you get another loading screen. Then you get to actually perform the task, and that might take about a minute to maybe 2 minutes, and then you get another loading screen. And then you get to speak to the person again, and get their reaction, and then one more loading screen. And guess what happens if you should fail one of these missions? Yep, you get to do the whole process over again. Each loading screen, all over again. Each loading screen takes about half a minute, and when there are this many of them, it really starts to get on your nerves. And to illustrate just how pointless the side quests are, here's an example of one. In order to follow Robotnik at one stage in the game, you need to ask the guards to open up the gate to the next area. However, you have to talk to the captain of the guards in order to get the gate open. So to do that, the guy tells you to run around town like an idiot talking to the other guys to give you hints as to who the captain is. And after running around for a few minutes, guess who the captain turns out to be? The same guy who told you to find the captain in the first place. You know, right now I'd rather go fishing for Big's frog than deal with this crap. And once you finally get to an action stage, it doesn't get much better. Each level has glitches and bugs, and controlling Sonic is a chore in and of itself. The regular speed sections are not too bad if you don't run into a glitch, but the platforming sections here are atrocious. Sonic's jumping controls are so rigid and stiff, if you overshoot something, there's no way to save yourself, you're screwed. And then there's the auto speed sections, where Sonic gets to take off at a run, and you can't slow down. Sometimes in these sections it's impossible to figure out where you're going, and the jumping controls here are delayed and feel floaty, meaning you're going to crash. A lot. I lost so many lives in these sections, and there really isn't anything you can do here to help. The worst bit is that getting to these parts of the stage means you usually already made it through the whole normal section of the stage, but when you die, it's back to the title screen and you have to start all over again. The best thing to do is to stack up as many lives as you can in the first half of the stage before you hit the auto-run sections, though good luck with that with all of the bugs and awkward controls during the first half of the stage. Sometimes in each stage you'll get to control Tails or Knuckles. Knuckles is alright for the most part as he can climb and glide, but Tails is just a pain in the ass. Tails attacks enemies by throwing a ring bomb which explodes rings, which might be the dumbest weapon in the history of ever. The explosion sounds just like the effect when Sonic takes damage, so half the times I can't tell if Tails got hit or if I hit the enemies. Also, flying as Tails is terrible. There's a set height in certain areas as to how high Tails can fly, and once you run out of flight power, you plummet to the ground. It's hard to find a landing spot since the camera moves in a weird way that prevents you from seeing the ground, and it's easy to miss your intended spot. the presentation is a bit mixed. The in-game graphics are bland while the cutscenes look very nice. Clearly most of the effort of this game went into making the cinematics look great, and they do. The biggest fault of the presentation is the frame rate. Anytime Sonic encounters more than one enemy on screen, the frame rate takes a nosedive. When Sonic runs too fast during the auto-run sections, the frame rate goes down. And sometimes when you're just moving around town, the frame rate slows to a crawl. There's not one part of this game where the frame rate is not affected, though sometimes you'll be glad it slows to a crawl, since then it's way easier to control Sonic during these times. The areas look alright for the most part, though all too often you'll be fighting with the controls to really care about your surroundings. The music is probably the best thing about the presentation by far, though it's a real shame that the music has to be associated with this game. Now, I'm going to be really honest here. Every game that I've reviewed so far for my channel, I have played from start to finish. In this way, I can clearly point out the things I like or hate from the very beginning up to the very end. However, with Sonic 2006, I only played through about maybe 3/4 of Sonic's story, and frankly gave up. In fact, it was a chore just to make it through the 3/4 of Sonic's story without resisting the urge to toss this game into a compactor. And I totally lost sanity when we got to the part when you have to perform those 3 trials in the forest for whatever reason. That's also why the Sonic series took a bit of an unseen break between Sonic Adventure 2 and Sonic Heroes. I've been actually trying to get through Sonic 06 for months, and finally I just gave up. There's no point in torturing myself playing as Shadow and Silver, since their levels are just as broken as Sonic. The only difference here being you get to play through broken levels with Shadow while in a car, and you get to play through broken levels as Silver with the stupid telekinesis ability. Now, I have a great deal of respect for anyone who actually managed to play through this whole entire game. For me, I just couldn't deal with it. And also, it's a fact that Sonic Team was aware of how broken and unfinished the game was. You see, back when they announced the game in 2005, the head of Sonic Team left the company, and the team was ended up being split into 3 groups. One would work on Sonic 2006 for the 360, the second group would work on it for the PS3, and the third group would develop Sonic and the Secret Rings for the Wii. So, now with a smaller team of people, Sonic Team couldn't realistically make the deadline for the game's launch in 2006. So they ended up refusing to listen to a lot of the quality assurance testers who told them how buggy the game was, and decided to release the game just as it was in order to meet the 06 deadline and be releasing on the Xbox 360 and PS3 at the same time. And because of all this laziness, Sonic Team would end up spending the next 5 years desperately trying to redeem the Sonic franchise. See, Sonic 2006 is a prime example of what happens when developers try to rush out a product to meet a release date. You know, had Sonic Team actually gone back and fixed these issues, well, the story still would have been just creepy and nonsensical, but perhaps the gameplay might have been decent. But there is one thing good about Sonic 2006 for the PS3. There's no trophies, which means that the game won't show up in your list of games that you played, which means once you delete the save data, it's sort of like the game never existed on your system. So, that's something. I truly feel sorry for anyone who bought this game at the retail price of $60. Even today, almost 10 years later, the game can still be bought at GameStop for around $20, which if you ask me, is $20 too much. In conclusion, I want to bring up an interesting point that might explain why Sonic games tend to suck in the more recent years. I mean, let's take a look at Sonic's rival back in the 90s, Mario. Mario's been in games for about as long as Sonic has been, and yet most of his games and spin-offs are usually very well received by critics, they sell a ton of copies, and they even win numerous awards. True, Sonic games win awards too, but they're usually the insulting ones. So what's the secret to the Mario franchise kicking ass and the Sonic series sucking ass? Well, the general thing is that Mario games have generally always followed the same story formula. The exception being the role-playing games, which tend to branch out a bit. Regardless, the story is always Bowser kidnaps Peach and Mario has to save her. What usually changes in each game is the mechanics in which to control Mario around each level, whether it be the gravity controls in Galaxy, the cat suit in 3D worlds, using Yoshi, touch controls, new power-ups, the list goes on and for every game there's been. It's these things that make Mario games simplistic and fun to play. Sonic, on the other hand, seems to be more interested in telling stories in the Sonic universe in place of putting the focus on good game design and control. These notions would seem to be correct, since the early games on the Genesis had simple plots just like in Mario, and they're remembered as some of the greatest games ever made. Sonic Team really needs to get back to that way of thinking, fun gameplay, not having their main character get it on with a human. Well, we're going to see over the next few reviews if Sonic Team can learn their lesson, though considering that the next couple of reviews are going to involve a genie, the medieval ages, and a werehog, I got a feeling it's going to be a while before I have fun playing a Sonic game for the series again. So, come back next time when we get to look at another Sonic game from 2006, that being Sonic and the Secret Rings. Thanks for watching.